Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to By Broad Potomac's Shore, poem number 15 of the 22 of the From Noon to Starry Night cluster in Leaves of Grass. Now, this is another one of those theodicies. That is to say, 1872 will be the year, man, right before the worst imaginable year in Whitman's life, as we've commented in earlier lectures. And he's going to have to deal with the pain, the suffering, the fact that things are not going well for him. And he's going to do it with this little poem that will find a lot of resonances for artists that begin to kind of doubt their, what would we say, ability? We're going to come back to Milton and Shakespeare when we finish this lecture, because Whitman knew he was in a tradition, a good literary tradition of self-doubt. Now, our assumptions are that you've been with us at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and that you were with us from the very beginning up to and including a set of introductory comments to Noon to Starry Night, and then we just finished with Spain, 1873-74. So notice here the proximity of dates from 72 to 73 to 74. Now, our Norton's, that we will consult regularly, tells us that this poem was first published as the last of the group of 7 poems composing the 1872 supplementary volume As a Strong Bird on Pinions Free. It was then reprinted in the 1872 Two Rivulets, and finally in its present position in Leaves of Grass 1881. Its lyric power, delicate beyond the cliches of sentiment, is sustained by memory and experience of a troubled year, 1872. The ravages of war were still fresh. The Washington clerkship was interrupted by necessary trips away, and illness threatened both the poet and his mother. No wonder his imagination was moved by symbol, the blood-red roses for friendship, and the perfume for memory. Let's enjoy now just reading this poem, although maybe enjoy is not the right verb here. Let's feel with Whitman the challenges of his experience. By the way, you'll remember the word broad being used in Song of Myself, passage 6 on death, spreading alike in broad zones. And Potomac, you'll remember, has already been used in our Ophiology, as well as Outline for a Tomb by you, Potomac, you'll remember. By broad Potomac's shore, again, old tongue, still uttering, still ejaculating, canst never cease this babble? Again, old heart, so gay, again to you, your sense, the full-fleshed spring returning, again, the freshness and the odors, again, Virginia's summer sky, lucid blue and silver, again, the forenoon purple of the hills, and again, the deathless grass, so noiseless, soft, and green, again, the blood-red roses blooming. Perfume this book of mine, O blood-red roses. Lave subtly with your waters every line, Potomac. Give me of you, O spring, before I close, to put between its pages. O forenoon purple of the hills, before I close of you. O deathless grass of you. This is one of those poems where the title, Leaves of Grass, becomes almost so clear that this could be argued one of the more important poems of Leaves of Grass, although obviously not well known. Let's begin, first of all, by just reminding ourselves that we will have in the opening lines the challenge of the old tongue, taking us back to poverty's, you'll remember, my tongue the shallowest of all. By broad Potomac shore, again, old tongue. Think about the power of rivers, the fact that rivers are this unbelievable symbol, yes, of inspiration. By broad Potomac shore, again, old tongue. Whitman already beginning to recognize in 72, 73 his aging. And then notice in parenthetics, he'll say about this tongue, still uttering, still ejaculating. This is the only time ejaculating gets used in all Leaves of Grass. Obviously can be both a linguistic as well as a sexual term. You'll remember the word ejaculate, however, was in Mother with I equal brood 5, and that's the only other use in all of Leaves of Grass. Notice he says about his tongue still uttering, canst never cease this. And then he calls it a babble, which is an interesting word. It takes us back to hand, mirror. This idea that babbling is what his Leaves of Grass is all about tells us there's a little bit of maybe self-doubt for the poet. Like, man, I don't know if what I'm writing is that important and that good. Again, and now we're back from old tongue to old heart. Again, old heart, so gay. Again, the word gay here, not having its sexual rendering as much as its happiness, Scooby Snacks rendering, right? Again, to you, your sense, the full flush spring returning. Notice in this poem there is this longing for a returning. We could be here speaking obviously about inspiration in the muse. Again, the freshness and the odors, we're going to get the perfumes in a little bit. Think about all the smells of Leaves of Grass. It's a fun way to read Leaves of Grass. Again, Virginia's summer sky. Lucid, of course, that this is the only use of that word. That area is clear, translucent, right? Blue and silver. Again, notice all the coloring going on here. Again, the forenoon purple of the hills. We're going to come back to it, obviously, in a bit. Again, the deathless grass. This is powerful to me, the way he uses the symbolism of grass. So noiseless, soft and green. Now, note the irony that he's asking, he's commenting on his own tongue as being babbling, but at the same time, he'll point out that the grass is noiseless. How cool is it that we're going to talk about grass in a collection called Leaves of Grass? Again, the blood red roses blooming. You'll remember this blood red from Wound Dresser 2, the blood redness of the grass. You'll remember this. And the idea of blooming is obviously central to spring and return and all of that. Then, after all of that, sounding very much like Shelley in Ode to the West Wind, he now will speak directly to the wind, and he will long that the Potomac as representative, that the grass as representative will do what? Well, perfume this book of mine, that is to say Leaves of Grass, obviously. You'll remember this word perfume first used in Cabin Ships at Sea. So right here at the very beginning of Leaves of Grass, we were already playing around with the idea of smell and odor. Oh, blood red roses again. Now we'll have 5 exclamation points to finish this poem. Lave subtly with your waters every line Potomac. Making the argument that Whitman is America's greatest poet because he borrows so heavily from these kinds of symbols like the Potomac. Give me of you. This, again, sounds very much like the invocation of the muse of both Homer as well as Virgil, right? Oh, spring. Before I close, the recognition is going to be used twice here. Obviously, Whitman knows that the end is coming. To put between its pages. Now, he could have said leaves, and instead he said pages, but we will understand exactly the game he's playing. Oh, forenoon purple, obviously from noon to starry night. This cluster is called that. This will explain why this poem is there. Purple of the hills, before I close of you. This syntax is interesting here. Oh, deathless grass of you. You'll remember the word deathless from To Thee Old Cause. And so when we're using these poems, Cabin Ships at Sea, To Thee Old Cause, we're going back to the very beginning. And many have argued that this is a poem very much like some of the inscription poems. The longing to somehow be able to find the meaning through these symbols in spite of the suffering that Whitman obviously is going through. Which leads us now to 2a. Out of great suffering, I think the argument of this poem is, often great accomplishment can arise. At 2b, I love his use of grass as a symbol, and I love that he will put it here near the end of Leaves of Grass. At 3a, I want to take us first to Shakespeare's Sonnet 29, When in Disgrace with Fortune. The poem of all poems where the greatest writer of them all says, I'm not sure that what I'm doing and producing is of that great importance. And then, of course, a few years later, his prodigy Milton will turn around in Sonnet 7 and in 19 with this level of self-doubt. I'm not sure that I'm able to produce what I should be able to produce. Artistic self-doubt leads us now finally to 3b. What was a time in your life when you struggled with self-doubt, whether inspirational or otherwise? In other words, you just weren't sure that you felt confident in yourself to do the thing you hoped that you could do, and yet somehow you found through that experience the grass. That is to say, you found a way. Thank you.